welcome to the stage from Cribl, Principal Solutions Engineer, Raanan Dagan, and Director of Services, Duca.
Really?
So, in this session, what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about a large financial institution that has been using Cribl for quite a while, several years, 2.5, 3 years, and we're going to take you through the journey of what we had to do to implement the solution. Along the way, we were going to go through how we got going, as well as the latest where we migrated from one SIM to another SIM, and so on and so forth. My name is Raanan. I am a principal sales engineer. I've been with Cribl for 3.5 years, and before that, I worked at Splunk for 8.5 years.
Hi, I'm Duca. I lead our professional services team. I've been here a little less than 3.5 years, and I also came from that other place that Raanan just mentioned. And I was helping this same customer early on in their journey, and still continuing to.
And with that, let's start with the challenges that we saw along the way. When we came into to this institution, this financial institution, we were facing pretty daunting task of helping the customer with an environment where they were already very much mature on a solution, an analytic solution where there is 25,000 dashboards, thousands of alerting, saved searches, active users, 15,000. It's a massive environment where there is a truly environment, very mature, very much everything is in motions. There is agents that collecting data and sending to that environment. We have, as this slide here highlights, 250 terabytes going into this environment. That's even before Cribl, including 60 petabytes of data that is stored in archival storage. This is way before Cribl started, and that's what we were facing. But, funny enough, this is nothing compared to where this customer wants to go. This customer wants to go into a much larger ingest. We're talking about a double of the current ingestion is the goal. It's 0.5 petabyte. Managed data, 100 petabytes on storage for compliance, for analytics and the like, and object, dashboard and the like. The goal for this next generation implementation is much, much bigger than the current one. The current one is massive. The next generation is massive times 2. And that's what we were facing as part of this, as part of the challenges. And as part of the partnership, as part of what Cribl brought into the table, we allowed this customer to increase the ingest rate by, give or take, 50x. And the adaptation, every time that this customer is a very challenging customer, every time they need something, the way it works is that immediately we go in from the team point of view, and we ask our PM and our engineering to enhance the product. And that type of partnership was a huge part of the success. And so we're talking about 30 Cribl enhancement in 36 months. It's just the minimum. I mean, we really, truly work with this customer all the time. Every release, 4.4, 4.5, 4.5.1, there is usually a feature that is associated directly with this customer. And so this kind of partnership really worked extremely well for us as well as the customer. And forecasting substantial lowering of the cost. This is another part. What is Cribl bringing to the table from a financial point of view? We actually, despite of all this massive increase or demand, we're actually lowering the cost. So that's another one. And then the abstraction layer, which is a big deal. Agents coming to Cribl, data comes into Cribl, Cribl has the same abstraction layer, and then we aggregate all the traffic and sending it to several destinations. So that's kind of what Cribl brings into the table. That's some of those challenges that we were facing. And kind of the before and the after Cribl, it was really hard for them. They were extremely mature. Everything was working really well to some extent because they were able to move 250 terabytes into that solution, but yet, when you look at all the things that we will highlight next, it's really just touching some of the challenges. And once we moved into Cribl, there is the ability to do much faster time to market, fine-grained workload management, to have a much more control for the end user, as well as the ability to send the data to multiple destinations so that not everything has to go to one big analytic buckets, but we can actually right now, because of Cribl, can send some of the data to one analytic tool, another set of data goes to the UEBA, another set of data can go to the metric store. And so that kind of capabilities of Cribl to take the same data and move it to a different solutions works really well for that particular customer. So with that, I'm gonna jump into the solution. What did we actually do? As part of this customer, you will notice that the three main use cases that we faced are routing, that's huge, that was probably the biggest, shaping of the data, as well as the third one are enrichments. You know, we always talk about data reduction as part of Cribl. That was not the key things that we brought into this. There is still data reduction, but it's not the key. The key are those three, the routing, shaping, and enrichment. In the routing, we're talking about multiple destinations. Each destination needs the data in a whole different set of shape, JSON, CSV, Parquet files, you name it, Cribl does that. And the third one, which is a big part of what Duca is gonna highlight, is the enabler for migration. That was huge because you go into a migration type of environment, you have to keep feeding those 250 terabytes to the existing environment. While you're doing it, you have to make a copy of the data into the new environment, in a whole new shape. That ability to not disrupt the old way, because you still, as we mentioned, we still have to face 15,000 different developers dealing with that data and dealing with that dashboards and dealing with the alerts on the old system while we're building the system with the new SIEM solution. Shaping, a big part of it, Cribl does event breaking, time zone improvement, format conversion. You're all very much familiar with that. That is very much of the pieces. And then enrichment. Cribl gives you lookups. One of the use cases was exactly that, to do the lookup in Cribl and enrich the data on the way to that analytic tool. So those type of capabilities of enrichment, of metadata, was a big deal. In multiple sessions, I saw adding tags to the data to each event, so you know exactly which application it came with. We're doing it with this environment, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the three main use cases that Cribl brings into the table. And with this slide, what we have here is the before the migration. What is before migration means? It took us about a year to get to here. In other words, we did a POV, and after the POV, we had what is highlighted over there. It's called the legacy system, and the legacy system kept on being the main destination. So we took the data from multiple sources, including syslog. That was a huge part of the POV, and then part of the implementation, the first phase implementation, as well as the HTTP. We had a massive amount, multiple terabytes of HTTP data that coming through Cribl. In Cribl, we did the lookup, and the lookup enriched the data and then sent the data to that analytic tool. And by doing it, we improved the performance by quite a lot for that legacy system, because that legacy system without Cribl had to go in and do the parsing internally to that system, and that may have taken hours. So this type of design of agents have their own work groups, the HTTP have their own work groups, and the syslog have their own work groups, worked extremely well. And now that Cribl released features like the TCP pinning. Whenever you do syslog and you send the syslog as a TCP, Cribl has the TCP pinning feature, and we truly enable that capability to be done just on one of the worker groups. Only subset of the worker groups of the workers are actually dealing with TCP pinning. Whenever you do UDP, Cribl has SPQ, source PQ, great for syslog, don't touch the other worker groups. So that type of design of going through and kind of analyzing what kind of traffic will go to what worker groups worked for us extremely well. As you can see, this customer is on-prem. And the reason I'm highlighting that is because there are plans for the future. And that's where we are at this point. The data comes from those sources to those 3 worker groups. And from the 3 worker groups, it goes to 2 or 3 destinations. One of them is the legacy system, still operational. The second one is the UEBA to allow the team to deal with that data. And this is what we faced after approximately a year of implementation. Hundreds of terabytes with this. And with that, I'm going to move the microphone to Duca, who is going to talk about
migration.
Sure.
So thank you, Raanan. So one of the things that Raanan said previously was that we had to do this migration without affecting the day-to-day operation. So I'm from Boston, and for the most part, the big dig let the city function the way it should. It was still a lot of traffic, but well, everything was going on. And so the same thing happened here. We had to put in a whole separate worker group to funnel traffic to, so that we could make some changes, we could test things out, we could make sure that the configurations that we're putting in, we're going to go to the new logging tools. And so those logging tools being Google Cloud Logging and Google Chronicle. So that migration worker group not only functioned as a parsing tier to make sure that we're mapping all those configurations. You saw Raanan talk about 15,000, 30,000, 40,000, 100,000 dashboards configurations. And so we're mimicking those configurations in that migration group, all while the data is still flowing through the other systems. And so we also had to beef up some of the other worker groups because we're taking in considerably more data. So the original system was scoped for somewhere around 100 terabytes and now over 250. So we upscaled over there to take care of that. And then also that migration worker group is also helping us move the 100 petabytes of data. So they obviously have compliance rules that need to be able to move that over into the new system. And so we're able to read the historical data out of their local S3 storage and be able to push that in and clean it up and make sure that we're fitting PII out of it, make sure that we have the right applications tagged to it so the retention rules are being kept there. And that's one of the things that Raanan was talking about too, is we want to make sure that we have all the appropriate tagging. And in their old system, it was a lot of stuff, read schema on the fly. And so now we're also taking those configurations and pushing them back to our abstraction layer. And so the results from phase 1 are pretty substantial. So they were able to get their next generation SIM up and running with the first 50% of the data sources in 3 months. And they started to go live with the detection rules in 6 months. And they're continuing to add more and more sources, but they're able to run and be live with the dashboards for Chronicle and still keeping their original SIM online to be able to compare and contrast. And we were able to find discrepancies and be able to move them over before they actually went live with that system. And that took them ahead of schedule by 1 year without, again, disrupting the flow of their current day-to-day system. We did obviously have some challenges about moving things from one place to another. Content sometimes doesn't move one-to-one, so there's a lot of filtering, there's a lot of reading and figuring out what you need, but now's the best time when you're moving your house to clean up stuff and make sure that you have the right configurations over there. And that we did have to build some tooling to help them with that configuration build out and run through that, but it's definitely been great for them. What's next? So 3 different pillars that they're working with in the next. They take advantage of with this next generation logging and also with Stream being in there. Now we can look at building in better filtering for PII, better masking for data that they don't need, and shifting logic more to the edge. And so edge agents would be a possibility here to help them out with the filtering. Automation, helping them build out and expand worker groups by templates, infrastructure as code coming in there. I think the one on the far right is the biggest advantage. So Raanan talked about, and just showed on those slides, the massive scale of logs and applications that they have, but that's not even touching all of the logs and applications. They've got developers that are still wanting to get more sources on, and so this helps them shift to self-service for them. So we can do consistent tagging, so we know which data belongs to whom, and they can start to get data in and an additional in there. And so we took the capacity off the legacy system and shifted that over to the production system. So giving them that granular access and ability to onboard data much quicker for them. So the future state of Stream takes away the migration worker group, because the migration worker group, again, was there for that legacy data, was also there for testing of configurations. And then we also removed their legacy logging. Again, this is not affecting anything to them. We could turn it back on at a moment's notice. And then replacing those particular user agents with Edge. And so there's quite a, again, with the drastic numbers we saw earlier, with their other legacy agent pulling in Edge and being able to filter out there and give the power, again, self-service down to the end users and groups to manage what they're doing and filter that data out before it even comes to Stream. So when we were helping them architect, and this is for everybody, there's a couple different guides that we use. Reference architecture, guides. Raanan, I think you went through some of this stuff. This is a lot of the SEs have built. And then architecture considerations, and then there's a podcast. Is there other documentation that you guys usually reference through helping customers and architect?
No, but everything that on this slide and everything that you highlighted on the previous slide, like the self-service, Cribl, Edge, supporting 250,000 that Ledian mentioned earlier, the self-services with Team and SSO, there was a bunch of new features. All of those are part of our plans for this customer. There is no, in other words, everything that we finish something, we're immediately thinking of what else can we do, and we very much step in step with Cribl engineering. That 100,000 or 250,000 that we released today, it's immediately in the plans for whatever the future. And so that's kind of very much, this is a great reference architecture, but bottom line, this type of partnership between us and the customer really works really well.
So that's what we got. So thank you.